Welcome back. I am really hoping you enjoyed that last tutorial with my little birdie. The concept I hope was easy to follow. I'm sure that you are understanding it. I'm sure that you understood it when I told you about a layer mask, and I'm sure that you understood, the alpha tutorial and so on and so on and so on, and you're ready to move on. But I'm sorry if I need to waste 3 more minutes of your time because I have to really imagine that one guy in the back of the class here, and I promise you that it's not just you, or that one guy. It's more like probably 75, 80% of the class that really doesn't understand. And it's not that they don't understand what's going on, they don't understand how simple it is or understand really just how many things tie into this. Everything ties into alpha, alpha channel. And it's such an easy concept when you think about it because it's the grayscale, and the grayscale is not that difficult. Your brushes are grayscale, layer masks are grayscale, alpha channel grayscale. So it's not like you have to learn multiple concepts here when you're dealing with it, and you're really just talking about it as one thing, grayscale. So one of the biggest reasons that you need to know this is because there are a lot of people out there that have the wrong idea. Painters that say that alpha has to do with shine, they're not 100% wrong. It is very wrong of a statement. But they say that because how they learned. If you were an FS9 painter, okay, and you had a paint that had a lot of black, you had a lot of shine, but that was because what was underneath that paint. Okay? So it had a very silver shiny body underneath that. So yeah, of course, the more that you made that transparent, the more that that shiny body underneath was showing through. But it had nothing to do with what you were doing in the alpha channel. Zero. Nada. Nothing. It does not make it shine. It makes it transparent. Okay. Now that isn't to say that a developer can't create their own shiny surface underneath that paint also. So here's a few tests you can try at home. Don't worry, it won't hurt, unless you have a cat, then it might hurt. Alright, now here's a sample that I made. You don't have this. This is just something to show you. Now, I have a layer of windows here. I'm going to shut them off so you can see that there's nothing underneath. But now, would I still have the cutouts if I had them in the alpha channel? Well, here's the alpha channel, and you can see that the windows are there, in the alpha channel, or black saying do not show, hide, and white is saying show. So yeah, I should actually see windows with my fuselage just like this. Okay, it should knock them out. So let's take a look. And look at that. We have windows. So what do you think? Is it sinking in yet? Now what would happen if I were to fill the whole thing in with white? Therefore, no alpha or no black saying, don't hide anything, show everything. And now if I go back here, you can see that I have the fuselage as is. Now what would happen? I can delete this, I don't need that. Let's take a look. Drum roll, please. And there it is. You see a little bump mapping there because I haven't touched that. That's still existing. That's the default bump mapping. But no windows. Nothing. Nada. Now let's do another test. Now if this theory holds true, what if I were to actually just fill in an alpha channel with this text? So again, our alpha channel right now is all white. So let's go ahead and control click here, make a selection. We can shut that visibility off, and we can go to our alpha channel, select it, and alt backspace fill that. So now we again have nothing here, but our alpha channel is going to say what? Come on, what do you think is going to happen? Well, let's see. Ta-da! Well, again, there it is. Again, you see a little faint hint of the bump mapping there from the default. But let's do one more test. One final test. Now, let's fill this all in with black. Therefore saying, I want you to hide everything. Don't show me anything. So no matter what's in my RGB channel, it doesn't matter. Hide it. Let's check that out. Well, there you go. So I'm hoping by now it's definitely sunk in. Okay? And I really, really want you to learn this stuff. But there's so much that goes into the grayscale, or it just has so much to do with Photoshop, images, video, and everything. So the more you know about it, and how easy it is, it's such a simplistic thing. It's going to benefit you tremendously. Okay? So you can see little things here and there, and that's fine. You know, and again, you always want to explore your different paints. You know, something might be modeled, another one didn't. A developer might have put a shiny surface underneath, you know, for you to work with. Your window cutout area might not have that shine layer underneath to give you window shine if you wanted to create your windows really, really large. So hopefully that all makes sense, and if it still doesn't make sense, well, come to the forum, dantrix.net, and post your question, and we have a lot of painters that will help you get where you're going. We don't want to have any gray area, and again, that gray area being what? That's right, half transparent. Alright, let's move on. Okay, now that we got all that done, let's go ahead and get back to where we were a couple of videos ago, and I'm going to go ahead and double click on my workspace here, and I'm going to choose the top one here, the Fuselage 1 PSD, hold down Control, choose Fuselage 1 Night 2, hold down Control, Fuselage 2, Fuselage 2 Night 2, Fuselage 3, and this Winglet Night PSD, and choose Open. Now I'm going to separate these here. I'm going to drag over this night one here, and I'm going to minimize this one. Drag over the night one, minimize this one, and drag over this one. This one is a night one here. And minimize this one. So these three are pretty much ready to be saved as DDS files right now. And if you can't save as DDS, if you don't have this option, and trust me, I talk to a lot of painters that use DXT BMP or Image Tool to save as DDS, and it kills me for some of these people that are actually doing that. You know, well-known painters that I have no idea why they do that. You don't need to do that. So watch video number 4 and come back and join us after you've done that. Okay? So if you remember, I saved this as 4096 by 4096. Right? But we don't want to save that. We don't need it that large for what it is. If you look at it, there's not a whole heck of a lot going on here. We don't need a file that big. All you're going to do is, you know, cause your customers or your fans, you know, more memory saturation. So you don't need a file that big. You could actually save these as 1024 by 1024 if you want. You know, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is you do save them these square. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and each one of these, I'm going to drop their size down now. But you know what? Before I do that, I want to instill good habits. And this is a habit that I do for 99.9% of all of my paints. I duplicate each one. Image, duplicate, OK. Then I can close this one down to be sure I don't accidentally save it. You know, flatten it and then save it. So this one's done. I'm going to do the same thing here. Image, duplicate, OK. And close down that one. Choose no. And same thing here. Image, duplicate, OK, and close this. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and resize these. Image resize, I'm going to type in 2048, and it's constraining proportions, so you see that it stays square. I'm going to copy this, Control C, OK. And do the same thing for these two. Image size, paste, OK. And that was Control V. Image size, Control V, OK. I like to move fast. Any shortcut I could find, I'm going to use it. So now the next thing here is right now we have to flip these vertically. So I'm going to go ahead and image rotate vertical. Choose this one, image rotate, flip canvas vertical, and here flip vertical. And now each one needs to be flattened. So I can flatten this one, and flatten this one. Now again, you flip vertically because FSX, okay? But don't take my word for it. You know, you might be using a paint or a paint kit that is already flipped for you, okay? And it doesn't really matter. The biggest thing that matters is that you know what's going on. So like I said in the written tutorial, go ahead and reference the files that you're going to be working with. So before you save Fuselage 1 Night 2, open up the DDS file in Photoshop. If you have those DDS authoring plugins, you can open them up in Photoshop just fine, as you've seen me do many times now. Okay, not many times yet, but I've already done them in videos. So, moving along. I want to now save this as a DDS file, so I'm going to choose File, Save As. And I like to keep my DDS files here. I'm not going to save them directly into that folder because I always want to have a backup. And this will always at least ensure that I have one backup. Okay, so I'll show you that in a minute. So I don't want this to say copy, so the first thing I'm going to do is make sure I remove copy and any space. I don't want to have a space after the T because it will save that, at least in CS3 it will. So format, I'm going to choose DDS. Video 4, people. If you don't have DDS, Video 4. Choose Save. And again, here's a peek at the settings. We haven't gone over this in a while, so make sure yours are like this. And if you're not in full screen at 1080p, then I don't care if you can't read it. Save. And that's that. Now, if you're saving 4096 by 4096, you're probably still waiting for it to save. And you probably will be for another few seconds. So I'm done with this one now completely. I'm going to go ahead and close it. Do the same thing with these two. Save as DDS. And I'm going to kill this right there. And no space and save. And the last one. File, save as DDS. Get rid of those spaces. Save and save. And that's it. Now let's go ahead and bring up one of these guys. Now this one right here, we have our windows, and you're probably still wondering what those are for. But again, these aren't going to be saved with the file. We only want them for the alpha channel. Okay, so I'm going to go full screen with this so I can show you guys better. Go into my channels here, choose alpha. Now, if you look around, you'll see that there's nothing else in number 1 here. So we can just go ahead and fill this whole thing, this alpha channel, make sure it's selected with Control Backspace, white. Alright. So now I can just go back to my layers here, and I'm just going to control click on this Windows layer, and there's the actual outline of it. And I'm going to Alt Backspace, fill that with black, and deselect that with Control D. So there's our windows. And I can go ahead now into channels. I can go back to RGB, and again, we can double check to make sure we did that okay, and I'm always paranoid. I want to make sure I do it once. Alright, perfect. So now I can go ahead and throw this away. No longer need that. And get out of here in full screen. And what I want to do now is I'm going to save this as DDS. But these are the ones that have the tendency to do a white line. So you could actually stay in full screen if you want. Make sure you hit F twice because you want to be able to see both your workspace and your texture. Okay? So go ahead and we want to flip this vertical. So I'm going to go ahead and I would say to duplicate this at this point, but I'm not going to. I'm going to just say image rotate vertical. Now, right now, we'd throw an error if we tried to save this as DDS because it's not flattened. It needs to be locked, okay? So if you just go ahead and flatten that image and make sure you don't have any kind of line, and on both areas too. No line, that's a good thing, and we're good to go. So now go ahead and File, Save As, and we want DDS, and Save, and again, make sure no mipmaps are checked. Save. Mipmaps are going to make a very, very dull, kind of blurry texture, and you don't want that. You don't need mipmaps. We've come a long way, So if you need MIPs, I have had to make them for some people, with slower computers. And it's not their fault that they, not everybody can have a supercomputer like you, but what can you do? For the majority of people, don't save with mipmaps. Alright, so that's it. It's saved. There's no lines here because right now if you look at the title bar here, you'll see that we are now in the DDS. So we don't have to worry about actually saving this by accident. It's still a good habit though to do that duplicate image. Okay? So we're done with this one. Next one. Now, number 2 here is kind of unique. If we go into number 2, I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to turn on the alpha channel, and you can see these little things up here. And what are those? Well, I'm not 1000% sure, but I'm pretty sure that those are your blinds in the windows that you see. Or not necessarily the blinds, but the actual alpha for the blinds. I haven't tested this theory out. I keep meaning to, but I just make it a mental note not to touch them. So I'm going to hit B for my brush tool, and I'm going to hit X to swap these colors, to flip them. And I'm going to make my brush really large with my right bracket key. And I'm just going to go ahead and fill this in, and fill this in. And what you also want to make sure you do with these is what I do anyway, is I make sure to get my lines here, or my sides. Because there are a few paints out there, or a few kits, that have faint lines there. Which is another reason I always tell you to zoom into that 200% and check it out. So we're done here, or partially done. We can go back to layers now, and there's our Windows layer. Let's actually make sure this one's aligned here. I remember we didn't at one point. So let's go ahead and zoom in here. And yeah, I can see it's not lined up right, so I'm going to deselect that and toggle the visibility off here. Oh yeah, good thing we checked it. I got to select my movement tool here to be able to nudge these with the keyboard. So nudge, shut the visibility off and on, not good, nudge it again, and keep going until it's right. Control click to check, and we look good. We look good. We are good. Whoa. Alright, I can go ahead and delete this layer now. And I'm going to go ahead, go right to my channels, select it, and hit Control Backspace, fill that with black. And deselect it with Control D. And we can get out of here. Now, why do I do my own windows? Or why didn't I notice the bug that everybody was talking about? Everybody was showing me textures and screenshots of their library with like half a window off. So I couldn't figure out why. Because I did my own windows. Now doing my own windows the way that I showed you, and doing the alpha channels like the way I just showed you, I would never run into the problem that everybody else was running into because mine were fine. Mine weren't, there wasn't a problem with the way I was doing mine. Okay, so I'm not saying that the person that did the other windows was wrong, but something got screwed up somewhere. It was either the alpha channel here or the windows are crooked. So in doing my own windows, I noticed that each one was like a pixel or two off from the other. They weren't in a total straight line. So if you're running into that problem, do check that out, erase that window, and just make your own window the way I showed you. And that really does matter on this area that I'm talking about on this particular PSD. Okay, Fuselage 2, this corner window here, is the one that's causing people problems. So do make sure you check this area out, and especially your alpha channel. So be in at 200%. Look for that faint line. Look for a white line through this window. You probably will have one. Okay? So there's your problem. Alright, so I'm going to get out of here. And I'm going to go ahead and same thing here. I'm going to flip this one vertical. I want to flatten this, even though it's one layer. Flatten. So it's going to lock. It won't throw an error. I'm going to choose Save As and DDS. And OK. And one more to go. So let's get this one up. And same thing, let's go into full screen here and zoom in and check out these windows first. Okay, so it was just that one that we missed, or that I missed. Can't wait to actually fly this one day. Alright, let's go into alpha channels, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom out a little bit. I'm going to actually deselect everything. And again, here you don't see those window blinds, or window blind alphas. I'm going to choose my brush tool and just fill this in with white. There we go. And go back to my layers, control click, and alpha, and control backspace, fill that with black. And we are good to go. Now, before I go further here, I'm going to actually go ahead and let's go through the motions here and save this and everything else. So image, rotate, flip vertically, and we need to flatten this. So let's actually get one of these windows. Don't need them. And flatten image. And check out the sides here. No white line. No white line is a good thing. And the back doesn't matter. We'll probably have a white line there, but that again is because the texture, the size of this. Don't worry about that. It's not touching any part of your fuselage or your paint. It will not show up. Alright, so do make sure you check these at 200%, people. Do make sure. Alright, so what I want to show you now, though, is I want to show you something that's pretty cool about the way Photoshop works in the alpha channels. So first of all, I never like to have this brush tool on or anything other than the marquee tool. Reason being is if I accidentally click somewhere, I'm not going to move something or paint something or erase something. All I do is draw a selection. So that's why a lot of people have said, you know, I noticed you keep switching to the marquee tool. It's a habit. I'm hitting M all the time. So if I have the movement tool selected, I just hit M, you know, subconsciously. Good habit to get into, by the way. So I'm going to go ahead and get into channels. And if you double click on your alpha channel thumbnail, you're going to get this up here, this channel options, or you should. I'm not sure about all versions of Photoshop, and I can only speak for Photoshop on this. But what you want to do is you want to have masked areas selected and keep the color red for now and 50% opacity. Choose OK. And what this does is that it allows it to show up at that 50% transparent and red color when you're viewing both the alpha channel and the RGB. Okay, so here, let's go ahead and zoom in. Here we can see our windows. We can see our alphas without really having to go back and forth. So instead of like seeing just the RGB, then just the alpha, we could also line things up this way. So again, you want to click on the visibility for it, and then we can get right in there and we could look at what's going on. And this happens a lot of times. If people don't want to create their own windows, they don't want to create their own alpha channels and everything else. Let me give you a hypothetical. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just go right into just the alpha channel. And this is something that you will see occasionally. and not this particular paint kit, but in some paint kits, you might have a window off there, and you might have a window here that's off a few digits. I'll just go ahead and grab my brush tool and just paint this in. Okay, so back to the RGB channel. Let's say that we had this visibility on here and we could see that these are off. Well, how do we fix that? Well, I kind of just showed you. All you need to do is drag a marquee tool around here, and with them both selected here, and let's make sure alpha's selected here, and just nudge it and get it to where you want it. It might have to go up or down. Just go ahead and get it into its place. Okay, so I can do the same thing here and switch the movement tool, and bam, there I am. Deselect, and let's just look at just the alpha channel here. So I'll shut the visibility off for RGB. And you do want to do this step to make sure you have no lines. Another way you could do it, of course, is you could just select it with the magic wand tool, so you're only moving that one. Alright, but I just wanted to show you that because that comes in handy. You know, when you're working on really like sophisticated, alpha channel type things. And believe it or not, even if you're shaking your head, no way, I'm not gonna, you will be. And I really hope you will be, because I'm gonna have a lot of tutorials out, and they're gonna show you some really cool things and cool ways to trace very complex images using nothing more than a few different settings with your channels. We're talking filtering hair out of an image, or the background out of the hair. So stay tuned for all that. Alright, now I can get out of here, FF, and I'm going to go ahead and see what we got here. We are already flattened. We're good to go. So I'm going to say File, Save As, and DDS, Save, and Save. Alright, once that's done, we can close this up. Now, what I want to do is I want to show you why I did it that way. So I'm going to go ahead and go into, say, my computer, desktop, and shortcuts. I had to move some stuff around recently, so we have the DA Clean folder here. And remember I told you to set it up like this so it shows details from the drop-down menu here? The reason for that is because now we can say date, and this is date modified. So if we click on that once, it should bring everything up showing you the last file. Don't look at folders, don't worry about that. The last file that you saved. And this can come in really handy when you're actually doing a lot of different files in one folder. And I have in some cases I have at least 100 files. So when I'm saving multiple things, I want to be able to make sure I'm only moving those over. So these are the ones that we want to move over. So that's only 6 files, and we're at 60 megabyte. You can imagine when you're doing a full paint. Okay, so anyway, let's go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and just right click on FSX, choose Properties, Open File Location, close this, and I'm going to go up to Sim Objects and Airplanes, and all the way down to the bottom, which is my folder for the PMDG 737-900 NGXWL. Now, before I said, in video 1, I said that I was going to be using Texture DTX 9, and I am. I still am, and I still want you to do that. But for right now, I'm testing a couple other things on with this I'm actually 3 or 4 tutorials above this one. I'm just redoing this one right now. So I'm going to leave that one as is. I'm going to actually just test here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and create a new folder. I'm going to say BU for backup, and I'm going to go ahead and click here, hold down Shift, click down here, and I'm going to drag these over BU, hold down Control, and you see it changes from move to copy. And I'm going to just copy all these there. Alright, so there it goes. Copied all those, and I have that back up. So what I want to do now is I want to take this thumbnail here, and I want to be able to tell it simply enough. So I'm going to just drag this into Photoshop real quick, and I'm just going to give it an effect. So I'm going to say OK to unlock that layer, and then I'm going to say a satin. And that's pretty much it. I'm just going to give it some kind of satin here. Let's say that. I like that. I can recognize that easy enough. And Control S, it's going to want to save as a thumbnail because I unlocked the layer and it's got effects on it. So I'm going to say JPEG. Take out that copy crap and choose save. Alright, now if I go back into that PMDG folder here, I can see that this somehow I dropped my L. I was wondering why it didn't say overwrite, so I'll just fix that now. So with this folder open and with my DA clean folder open, or your PSDs file open, just go ahead and I have 6 items. I make a mental note of that and I click and I drag them over and make sure it says copy to texture. I don't want it to be like this. I don't want it to move them. I always want to have a backup. Okay? So let them go. I always want to make sure that it's replacing the same amount that I'm dragging over. So if I'm dragging over 6 files, it should say down here 5 because it's showing me the first one, which is 6. So here I can see this one is newer, of course, and it's just a few things to stay in the habit of. You can sit there and keep clicking on each one, or you could just say, do this for the next, and it will do it. Alright, so we're pretty much ready to test now. We can get into FSX, launch it up, and see if we have any problems. So do keep in mind, too, when we're doing this, that you're not going to not ever have any problems, because there's always going to be some kind of problem. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and launch FSX here. Alrighty. Well, looking at the clock right now, we're over 30 minutes into this, and I don't want these videos to go on that long. They're an editing nightmare to go on that long anyway. Plus, I know you have things to do. So go ahead and do your inspection at your own leisure, and I will see you in the next tutorial where I will do my own inspection, and I will show you some cool ways to keep track of things. In the form of a cut list. Alright, so I will see you then. Bye-bye.